So one of the things that I've learnt quite a lot about from doing this course is how things vary across different countries. Because most of the examples that I know, or pretty much all the examples that I know, are local to the UK, and then there's a handful in Western Europe and in North America. But I've been learning a lot about how some of these techniques are used in different countries, particularly things around how, for example, census categories, how things get measured. That varies a lot across different countries in really interesting ways.
For me, a kind of a really great surprise was that how many there's people out there who want to understand statistical data which are presented in the media and to do their research with statistical data.
One of the things that was really great is that some of the other learners helped participate and helped me explain things that maybe I didn't do a very good job of explaining. So I really appreciated the fact that they were able to contribute and clarify stuff that I thought was really clear at the moment when I was writing it or describing it or talking about it in a video, and then turns out that actually I didn't do a very good job of explaining certain things, so I really appreciated their help in making things clear for me.
One of the things that quite a few people commented on was saying, I don't like the way in which people classify things like ethnicity and race. And it's an interesting one because in some ways I agree with it and in some ways I disagree with it, because in one sense, yes, we're all human, yes, race doesn't matter, but in other ways, race really does matter. If you ask people who are in certain ethnic minorities whether their race matters to their experience of life, they will tell you that it does. And so categorizing often feels quite uncomfortable, but it also allows us to find some really, really important things.
I can empathize with people who say that these categories are unnatural or ones that we shouldn't be using. I think a few people commented that by survey providers using the categories or government agencies collecting data on those categories, they're implicitly or explicitly endorsing the fact that there are racial differences among people. And I don't think that that's necessarily the right way to think about it. I think you're right in saying that the categories can be useful for us because whether we like it or not, in the world we know that people tend to categorize. They do it with all sorts of different things based on gender, race, ethnicity. So whether or not we want people to do it, they tend to use these categories. If we ignore that, then we're not collecting data that might be useful for us to find patterns, to find problems that we could address through policies or what have you.
One of the things that I found interesting was that a lot of people's experiences of doing surveys, and actually as survey participants, is things like maybe they stayed in a hotel or maybe they bought something online, and then maybe a day or two later they'll get an email saying, we'd like you to tell us about your experience. And one of the things that particularly comes up is people are asked questions that aren't that relevant. Out of 5, how good was the laundry service when somebody didn't use the laundry service? How do you respond to that? I guess what I'd like people to come away from this thinking is not that conducting a survey is impossible, but it's really, really hard. And so when you've done it, it's not going to be perfect for everything. There might be some things that you hope you were going to be able to do that turn out to not be possible. It might be that you use somebody else's survey and you disagree with the way that they frame the question, so you don't think it's as useful as it might be. But that doesn't mean that it's hopeless. It just means it's not perfect for what you want to do.
As long as you're aware that there's some uncertainty in the results that you're looking at, I sort of think of surveys or any other kind of data source as evidence, right? Somebody makes an argument or somebody says something and then they're providing you some evidence. Some evidence is stronger than others or better than others. I need additional information for me to be convinced or to think that this result holds in reality.
Yeah, I think that was the whole point of our 3-week course, to make people aware of these all different choices and possibilities for error. So that's why it's so important that you can find this information when you read information in media or see somewhere a news, that you should be able to make this decision whether this evidence is good or not.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what we want is to be aiming for this kind of ideal world where misuse of data is rare, and when it happens, everyone immediately sees it and calls people out on it. That's not going to happen soon, but if we think of that as the end point, that's the point that we want to be campaigning for, if you want to think of it like that. It needs everyone to be involved in that, from the press to the researchers to the general public.
Well, yeah, and I think from my point of view, one of the nice things is making people aware that these are things that they should be asking for, so that if consumers are demanding this information, then it puts pressure back on media, it puts pressure on agencies that are collecting information to make sure that the source of the data and all the other methodological information is easily accessible and it's written in a way that people can get access to, but also can understand
I'd be interested to see how learners are sort of feeling about this question now, because we asked this question at the start about where they think responsibility lies, and there was an interesting discussion. People sort of held different opinions, people sort of had slightly different attitudes based on maybe the kinds of jobs that they did, the kinds of experiences that they had. And a lot of those, they were all really well thought out, very clear, and I'd be interested to know now either whether their answers to that has changed in terms of where responsibility lies, or also if maybe their position has changed on how we might do that, how we might make sure that people hold responsibility in the way that learners think that they should, what's the best way of making that happen.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I would like to know is, out of the 3-week course or out of the entire course, what are the things that they found most useful? What are the things that taught them, things that they didn't know before, or things that they might be able to take back to their job or to their everyday life.
I think at this point we'd really like to thank all of our learners for their participation in the course. The discussions have been great. We've learned a lot from the discussions that have been going on, and we hope that you have as well. And we'd just like to say thank you and goodbye.